Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump in the national polls by 0.5% per Real Clear Politics' latest average. If the election were held today, that margin would almost certainly not be enough for her to win the 2024 presidential race. That's because the Electoral College map structurally favors the Republican Party by anywhere from 1 to 3 points. In this current environment, Democrats, in this case Kamala Harris, will likely need to win the national popular votes by at least 2 percentage points to have a shot at 270 electoral votes. Let's take a look then at the latest polls in the key battleground states that will ultimately decide who secures the Electoral College and thereby the presidency. On your screen right now is the battleground map. The states I've already marked in as solid blue or solid red are those deeply aligned with one party. They each back Trump or Joe Biden in 2020 by at least 8 percentage points, and every forecast out there has them at least a 90% chance or higher of voting this way. And so that leaves us with just 13 states now, plus the second congressional districts in Nebraska and Maine, as potentially in play for either Vice President Harris or former President Trump. Now, the two candidates do hold a clear edge in most of these states, as you'll soon come to see, but they are all very likely to be decided by single-digit margin. And so should either candidate win in a landslide, they could theoretically flip either direction. Unfortunately, we do not yet have any polls between Harris and Trump in New Mexico. It did vote for Biden by 11 points in 2020, and since last going Republican in 2004, it's voted for Democrats by at least 5 points every cycle since. So it's going to be likely Democrat here in the absence of poll data. We also don't have a Harris versus Trump poll in Texas, Trump +6 in 2020. It had been trending left over the last 2 decades or so, but significant Republican gains among Hispanics in the Rio Grande Valley, here in South Texas, have completely halted Democrats' momentum. Trump led Biden by 8.6% based on 15 polls before Biden dropped out of the race per DDHQ in the Hill, and so will place it down as likely for Trump here. Finally, we're also missing polling data in both of our competitive congressional districts up here in Nebraska and Maine. Nebraska 02 is rapidly left trending, and Biden won it by 7 points in 2020, so we'll mark it down as leaning blue. While Maine 02 is more Republican friendly. It's very rural, and it did back Trump in 2016 and 2020 by comfortable margins, so it joins Texas as likely Republican here. 12 states remain then, here in gray, combining for 152 electoral votes. Let's go through them now region by region, starting with the southwest duo of Nevada and Arizona. Two absolutely critical battlegrounds here that are headed on opposite trajectories. Nevada has trended nearly 5 points to the right since 2012, whereas Arizona almost 9 points to the left. Republicans managed to flip the governor's office in Nevada in the 2022 midterms and received more votes for U.S. House across the 4 congressional districts than Democrats for the first time in decades. Comparatively, in Arizona, Democrats have now won the last 5 straight major statewide races for president, Senate, and governor. Now, the latest poll in Nevada via public policy polling has Trump leading Harris by 1 percentage point, with 46% to 45% among 400 likely voters sampled between July 23rd and 29th. Democrats have generally dominated statewide elections here over the last 2+ decades. Biden carried it by 2.4% in 2020, though as I had mentioned, it has shown signs of trending towards Republicans in recent years, and Trump certainly entered this cycle in a better position to flip it than any other Republican in recent history. It does tilt his way on our map with a 1-point lead for him. Then over in Arizona, the latest survey in Arizona comes via high ground, and it has Harris leading Trump by 3 points in a head-to-head race among 500 registered voters surveyed between July 30th through August 5th. Now, this is the first time all cycle in which we will fill Arizona as a blue state in one of these latest poll update videos, as it leans towards Harris here based on that 3-point margin. Back in 2020, Joe Biden became the first Democrat to carry the Grand Canyon state since 1996, as he just narrowly edged out Trump by 0.3%, making it the second closest state in the 2020 election after Georgia. Speaking of Georgia, let's shift our focus over to the southeast now. Here, starting with the Peach State, the closest state in 2020 at Biden plus 0.2. Here in this cycle, Trump had consistently led Biden in the polls by around 4 to 6 points per DDHQ in the Hill, similar to Arizona and Nevada before the president dropped out. Yet here, again, you see Harris gaining back some of the ground that Biden had lost, as Trump leads by only 2 points over Harris, 46% to 44%, among 600 likely voters in a Fabricio Lee/Impact Strategy survey from late July. Now, if Harris is going to outperform Biden anywhere on the map, it's going to be in a state like Georgia, with a high percentage of African American and young Democratic voters that simply were not energized by Biden's candidacy. Now, based on this poll, it is another tilt Republican margin for Trump, lifting him up and ahead of Harris in the race to 270, now with 211 electoral votes over 208. Now, before we move on to Florida, let's take a moment to talk about something that is changing the game when it comes to bad habits. Have you heard of the flavored air category? It's quickly becoming the leading alternative to vaping and smoking, and today's sponsor, Fume, is at the forefront of that movement. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device that draws delightful flavors to your mouth without any vapor, nicotine, or batteries. You can use it anywhere, guilt-free, and it even helps fill the void that ditching a bad habit can leave. Plus, it looks awesome and is designed to calm anxiety with its magnetic snaps and clicks. Fume has already served over 300,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code ElectionPredictions to get your free topper. It's the perfect accessory to your Fume device. Slip it onto the mouthpiece for a softer, warmer feel. It's also chewable for those who love to fidget, and it's reusable. Head to tryfume.com, that is tryfum.com, and use code ElectionPredictions, or scan the QR code on your screen to get your free Fume topper when you order your Journey Pack today. Alrighty, now in Florida, an electoral giant with 30 electoral votes, Florida was one of just 5 states in 2020 where Trump improved on his 2016 margin, as he carried it by 3.4%. It's only shifted further to the right since then as well, and the latest survey released by Redfield and Wilton Strategies here shows Trump up 6 points among 1,138 registered voters, 47% to 41%. It is really crazy to think that as recently as 2020, more money was spent on Florida than any other state. That simply just won't be the case here in 2024, as I doubt the Harris campaign thinks they have any real chance here. It goes down as leaning Republican. Heading up the coastline to North Carolina, a perennially competitive yet Republican-leaning state in recent years. Trump won it by just 1 percentage point in 2020, but it polled much more strongly here against Biden this cycle. Now, back on our map, the latest poll from Signal Research, in consultation with the Carolina Journal, released this poll from August 4th through 5th that has Trump leading Harris by 3 points among 600 likely voters, 47% to 44%. Independent Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is pulling in 4% here in this poll. Now, his numbers have been tanking across the country over the last few weeks. Nevertheless, that is a lean margin for Trump here in North Carolina. The Tar Heel state is probably the closest thing to a must-win for Trump. If he were to lose North Carolina, his path to 270 and back into the White House becomes extremely unlikely. On the other side, it's probably the only semi-possible flip opportunity for Harris and the Democrats on this map. They're mostly going to be playing defense elsewhere. Closing out the Southeast region now, let's head up to the Commonwealth of Virginia. 13 electoral votes here. They went to Biden by 10 points in 2020, as he became the first Democrat to carry Virginia by a double-digit margin since 1944. Long a reliably Republican state, then a swing state, it's now strongly Democratic-leaning. Trump had polled within striking distance, or even ahead of Biden at times in Virginia this cycle, but kind of like Georgia and North Carolina, Harris's appeal as a candidate is most strongly suited to Virginia's demographic profile, at least as compared to the Rust Belt quartet that we'll get to up here shortly. The latest poll in Virginia has Harris up only 2 points, 46.7% to 44.5%, among 1,000 registered voters in this Emerson College sample. So 2.2% is the margin to be exact. That is a tilt blue margin for Harris. Alrighty, 6 states remain now in the Northeast and then across the upper Rust Belt. They combine for 60 electoral votes that will make or break each candidate's path to 270. Let's start with the upper Rust Belt quartet of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. These 4 battlegrounds have voted for the same candidate as one another in almost every modern presidential election, voting blue in the 6 elections between 1992 and 2012, before Trump then managed to flip Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania each by less than a point against Hillary Clinton in 2016. Clinton did manage to hold Minnesota by 1.5 points in that election, and then in 2020, Joe Biden returned the core Rust Belt trio back into the Democratic corner. He won Pennsylvania by 1.2%, Michigan by 2.8%, Wisconsin by 0.6%, and then Minnesota by a full 7 points. Back on our map, let's start in Minnesota here. Redfield and Wilton Strategies again released a survey last week that is Harris leading Trump by 5 points among 623 registered voters sampled between July 31st and August 3rd. Now, this would be a 2-point underperformance for Harris compared to Biden in 2020, though definitely an overperformance relative to how he was performing in the polls here in 2024, where Trump often polled within a point or 2. Here on our map, it gets marked down as leaning Democrat, adding 10 electoral votes to the Harris tally. Then over in Wisconsin, out of the core swing states this cycle, Biden's numbers were surprisingly the strongest here before he dropped out. I say surprisingly because Wisconsin is right trending, both fundamentally and demographically. It voted to the right of Michigan and Pennsylvania in 2016 and 2020, and is whiter, more rural, and has a lower proportion of college-educated residents as well, 3 demographic factors that do tend to favor the GOP. Yet the latest survey here from RMG Research between July 31st and August 5th has Harris leading by 3 points, 48% to 45%, among 800 registered voters. Now, it is worth noting that abortion rights have been a focal point of Wisconsin state politics since the Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade in 2022. Whereas the right to an abortion is effectively enshrined in state law in both Michigan and Pennsylvania, it's in flux here in Wisconsin. Abortion is one of few winning issues for Democrats at the moment, and so that could be playing a role in these more favorable numbers for them here. Let's head to Michigan now, though, which is generally considered the bluest of the 3 core Rust Belt swing states, excluding Minnesota, as it does consistently vote to the left of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania at the presidential and down-ballot level. However, the latest survey from Redfield and Wilton Strategies has Trump leading Harris by a point at 42% to 41%, with a whole lot of undecideds in this sample of 917 registered voters surveyed between July 31st and August 3rd. Now, you could make a strong case that Michigan is the counterpoint to North Carolina as a must-win for Vice President Harris. Should Michigan vote for Trump, it's likely that he'd win most other battlegrounds on this map as well and comfortably secure 270. It does tilt his way here on our latest poll map, which does lift him right above 270 with 272 electoral votes now. So even if Harris does win the 3 remaining states, this coalition here of Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, and Michigan would be enough for Trump to secure a non-consecutive term in the White House. Alrighty, let's see if he can expand this narrow edge now in Pennsylvania, which awards 19 electoral votes. Now, with Florida no longer considered a true swing state, Pennsylvania has become the largest electoral prize among 2024 battlegrounds, which also makes it the most likely tipping point state in this election. The latest poll released in Pennsylvania by Fabrizio Lee has Trump and Harris tied with 48% of support each. 600 likely voters were sampled here between July 29th and August 1st. Now, that tied margin does translate over to a pure toss-up rating category here, as we head to our final stop in the Northeast, New Hampshire and Maine. They, along with Minnesota over here, have followed similar trends over the last couple cycles. Hillary Clinton narrowly held them in the Democratic corner against Trump in 2016 by less than 3 points each, before Joe Biden then shoved them harder to the left by more than 7 points each in 2020. The last time any of them voted for a Republican presidential candidate was New Hampshire back in the 2000 election, so 6 cycles ago. Now, the latest 2024 survey in Maine via Pine Street polling has Harris leading Trump by 8 points, with 48% to 40% among almost 1,500 likely voters sampled between July 23rd and 25th. RFK Jr. is at 4% here. It's especially worth monitoring his vote share here, as Maine will utilize ranked choice voting in November if neither Harris or Trump hit 50%. Maine did vote for Biden by 9% in 2020, so this is a slight underperformance for Harris relative to that election, but again, a massive overperformance compared to how he was polling this cycle. It goes down as likely Democrat here. And then to wrap things up, in New Hampshire, it does tend to be the most competitive state here in the Northeast region, excluding Pennsylvania, of course, though it has now voted blue in 7 of the last 8 cycles. Emerson College has Harris up 6 points among 1,000 registered voters surveyed between July 26th and 28th, 47.7% to 41.4%. RFK is at 5.8%, and so it will lean blue with a Harris plus 6 lead here, lifting the vice president's electoral count up to 247 as she continues to trail Trump's 272, with 19 electoral votes in Pennsylvania marked down as a toss-up. So that'll do it for this latest poll-based map projection. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below so you don't miss future editions of presidential election analyses. You can also feel free to let me know in the comments what you think of this map and these electoral race ratings. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure to leave a like on the video down below as well if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.